Less than 1 week after the murder of the CEO of UnitedHealthcare, police have arrested and charged the individual they believe did it. And there's some pretty strong evidence of that. This is Luigi Mangione. And a lot of speculation that's been swirling around the case since the murder first happened turned out to be pretty right on the money. And so you can see a photo of him. I don't know if there have ever been more photos released and leaked at different phases of the criminal justice system than Luigi has had. Basically, everyone, the police, the booking, the in prison, everyone who's interacted with him has released at least one photo, and it's a little bit strange, but that's what we've got. So he's been charged in Manhattan with second-degree murder, according to online court records. He's also charged with 3 gun charges and forgery. The gun charges include unlawful possession of a loaded firearm and what appears to be a charge for possessing a suppressor, a device to lower the volume of the report of a gun. There's also claims that it was a 3D printed gun, although I don't know if any crimes are going to be alleged in regard to that. But he was denied bond at his arraignment. I mean, he had fled the scene of the crime, so there was concern that he would do so again, I suppose. He did dispute 2 of the judge's claims. One, that he was in possession of a substantial amount of cash when he was arrested, that being $8,000 plus additional foreign currency. Maybe lending credence to the idea that he might be, attempting to flee the country, and that he used a case that cloaked his electronic transmissions to evade detection. Obviously, he was found. There was a tip that had to do with McDonald's, and so he was eventually tracked down despite these measures. And I will say that he was apparently found with a handwritten manifesto where he takes responsibility for the murder. It notes that as UnitedHealthcare's market capitalization has grown, American life expectancy has not, saying, quote, "To save you a lengthy investigation, I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone." The note condemns companies that, quote, "continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public has allowed them to get away with it." The manifesto mentioned UnitedHealthcare by name, noting the size of the company and how much money it makes. It also broadly condemned healthcare companies for placing profits over care. And there's been a lot of discussion and conversation around this crime and this individual and why he might have done it. And it looks largely like he did it for the reasons that people almost immediately speculated. And obviously people's thoughts in this area have manifested in a lot of different forms, Ida, but we were talking before the show about how people have had to feel a lot of grief and a lot of fear on this side, and now you're sort of seeing it on the other side a little bit. So what do you think now that we found the guy, he did it for the reasons it seems that we thought he did? What do you make of all this?
I think that what you're hearing from people who may seem like they're cheering or celebrating is just the pain of people who have been oppressed by this corporate structure that's been abusive and consistently diminishing the quality of life of the American people who show up every day and work to make this country go. And so, I'm not one to celebrate murder, but I just think it's interesting how a country who was founded on violence, a country who has been perpetuating violence against a lot of people throughout, when they're shocked when someone that they idolize or someone who is a part of their 1% group expect empathy from the very people whose necks they've had their foot on for a very long time. And though I don't celebrate, I'm sure that man has a family and has children and has parents and a spouse, and there's nothing to be celebrated. But I understand why people are disconnected and feel, people are trying to figure out how they can go to the doctor. People who have conditions where these healthcare, these insurance companies don't give a damn about them beyond life. And now you're expecting those people to care about you. And I think that's kind of ironic.
Mhm. Yeah, look, I'm not going to go off on a whole long thing about it, but I think there's regular people, many of whom have had experiences with the health insurance industry, or at the very least know people who did. I mean, who doesn't at least know someone who's been abused by the industry, expressing their frustrations, their rage, their grief, all of that. I've been a little bit bothered by the people these are not regular people or even people that have this experience that are just hammering it home over and over, and it's clearly brand building. That to me starts to seem like very opportunistic like monetization of murder at that point. But I'm not going to get down on regular people who are expressing their frustration. I don't personally delight in murder, crimes or whatever. I don't delight in this murder any more than I delight in what I see as the murder of people who deserve healthcare who don't get it because of these companies. I think a lot of people initially pointed out, aren't these equally murder? But then I think a lot of that is lost in people's commentary, that two things being equally bad is two bad things.
Yeah.
That seems to be lost a lot in people's, I don't
I,
know, in
I'm
some people's drive to get retweets, I think. But
I mean, I just told you before we got on, you are a really good human being. And I know that you have empathy and that you have compassion and you care about others. But I just think when you think about the numbers, like this happened to this guy, how often does that happen? How often does this happen over here on this side? So when you see people hammering it over and over again, it's probably desperation and hopes that it may send a message to the people who continue to do this to the American people. Because the reality of it is that I know 3 or 4 people that have died in the last 2 years, because of horrible things. Someone that died last week because of the healthcare system in the United States, a Black woman in a hospital in a state that calls itself progressive. So I just think that, forgive my stoic stand right now because I certainly don't celebrate anyone being murdered, but I do understand why people are harping on this because
yeah,
it doesn't normally happen. You hear about one Robin Hood, but how many of the other villains do you hear about? And the villains are always glorified. In America, we glamorize this billionaire status. People worship Elon Musk because they want to be him and they think they can be him. And he's the very reason why they could never be him. And
100%.
so, you know what I'm saying? So when you see people saying this kind of stuff, I understand where it comes from.
Yeah. I'm so glad you made that point because I was going to talk about, like, we worship our oppressors. Like they're celebrities to us.
We fund
Um, and by the way, and everybody don't get it twisted. I'm not going to like celebrate a murder or whatever, but I think people the CEO, the way that the CEO and others of these companies kill people is legal in America. I don't think it
Mhm.
should be. And I think they should be rotting in prison. I think
Same.
that Elon Musk, what he did in the election, that is legal bribery. It shouldn't be. He should be in prison for the rest of his life. Like, so don't get it twisted what I think about these people. I think that they should be suffering the consequences of what they did. They've just rigged the system so that their crimes are legal. When you click the join button and become a tier 2 member, you get access to all of our weekly top 10 lists. What are you waiting for?